Alright, hello guys. Today we're going to be talking about a less major snowstorm for the northeastern United States, but still is there the possibility for a snowstorm starting on December 5th, which is tomorrow, and lasting all the way through to the 7th potentially. Now, before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content. And also be sure to share this with your friends and family that might find this interesting, informative, or useful if they do live in some of these regions. Now let's get right into things. Now we're going to be looking at our GEM model here as kind of our futurecast radar type deal here. And a lot of people have been asking why I use the Canadian model because historically it isn't one of the best. But they were saying that in it was a video like last week about the huge winter storm that hit New England. And it was the only model that showed it, well, in tandem with the European model, but I don't show the European model. So the Canadian model showed it and it ended up being right. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with it. Sometimes these models do really good on a whole year basis, so if it starts to do good with some of these winter storms, I'm going to start relying on it more and more and more as it does good. Now, we're looking at our Futurecast radar, and you can see there's nothing really going on here. This is the beginning of Friday, December 6th, so it's Thursday into Friday. Now, we're going to move on a frame, and you can see by the time we reach maybe 2 a.m. on Friday, December 6th, we start to see some snowfall starting up for Michigan, and it's going to eventually head into the northeastern United States. It's going to get very, very exciting as we see this one bring moderate to heavy snow for upstate New York and portions of New England. Alright, so as you can see, the low pressure system is located right there around maybe Buffalo, and we see some of that light to moderate snow entering the state of New York and northern Pennsylvania as well, the Finger Lakes regions, all of those very, very western regions in New York. Now, we're going to move on one more frame, and you can see a lot of that moderate snow is around the lakes, and usually what we would be expecting in events like this is lake enhanced events, and it's kind of where it's sort of lake effect, but we also have a synoptic snowstorm going on as well for the entire area, and they combine to create some heavier snowfall for areas around the lakes, and this is pretty common. Also, take notice that a lot of that moderate to heavy snow is in the same regions that did see a lot of snow in our most previous snowstorm. I'm going to talk more about that potentially at the end of the video, depending how short this one goes. I don't want it to be too long. But we do see Albany, Syracuse getting snowfall by this point, the Berkshire, southern Vermont. All of these regions actually saw around 24 inches of snow during this most previous snowstorm. Very, very major event, and it actually overperformed a lot. Now, we're heading into the late evening of December 6th into December 7th, where things are going to get very, very exciting, and this is where things could be a lot more intense than what the models are showing right now. I'll talk more about that in just a second. Alright, so as you can see, our low pressure system is now located offshore of Boston and Maine, pretty close to the coast. Now, something else to mention is that a few days before our most previous snowstorm, the one that was very, very major, Ezekiel, that affected the northeastern United States, it wasn't looking very strong at first, but then it very rapidly started to look more and more intense. So I am open to the idea that this one could be a lot more major than what we are currently thinking, and you guys should be too. Just be aware that this one could be a very, very major event compared to what we're showing right now, or it could be a lot weaker. These storms have been very, very hard to predict so far this winter, but things look to get easier in the future, and that's usually how it goes. Once we're in January and February, we have a much better hold on what the models are trying to show us. So you can see there's moderate snowfall going on from the Finger Lakes regions up through some of the Adirondacks into Vermont, New Hampshire, a lot of regions in Massachusetts as well. Boston, you're right on that mix line, so it's going to be a tough call. But if this storm looks to be a little bit further south and hit a bit later, then we could be looking at more snowfall further and further south. Let's head on another frame towards the late night of Friday into Saturday, December 7th. And you can see we do have some lighter to moderate snow for the coast of Maine and as well as New Hampshire there, but not a lot else going on. It moves pretty fast and gets out of here. Again, that's something that could definitely change. It could last a lot longer. We do see some lake effect bands going on potentially according to this model, so keep that in mind as well, as we have this giant mass of cold air heading in right behind this storm. As we head towards the morning time of December 7th, you can see it's all said and done. Now, let's get into some of your total snowfall according to some of these models. We're looking at our GEM model, which is the one we were just looking at. This is the total snowfall. We can see In the gray colors, that's where we're looking at a dusting to 2 inches of snow. As we get into some of those lighter blues, maybe 2 to 4 inches of snow. And then in the darker blues, that's where we're looking at 4 to even 6 inches of snow. So some of those Berkshires, areas in Vermont and upstate New York around the Finger Lakes and to the west of the Adirondacks, we are seeing potentially 4 to 6 inches of snow. And as of right now, that seems to be the bullseye. But again, I would not be surprised if we start to expect more like 6 to even 10 inches of snow from this one. If it just looks to be a little bit more major for some of these regions, all it takes is a little switch like that. Now, we're about to move on to your European model, your GFS, and your GFS Ensemble model. So some of your other models as far as their total snowfall as well, which is going to be super, super exciting. All right, so looking at your European model, we can see it's a lot less major. Some of the gray areas around there, again, dusting to 2 inches. And then we see some of the lighter blues there for western New York, maybe looking at 2 to 4 inches of snow. But on the European model, not looking as major as the Canadian model so far. Looking at your GFS model, it's even less major. We do see some of those lake effect enhanced regions getting a lot of snow. But besides that, not a lot going on for those regions. But the GFS Ensemble model, which is a combination of many models all put together, we see a lot more snow, a lot closer to what the Canadian was showing as far as intensity, but really not looking at too much for the coastal regions like on the Canadian model. So there's a lot of things that could happen, and that's why I'm not making a snowfall forecast for this one yet, because there's still just so much that could change, and we could be looking at so many different solutions with this one. Now, let's get into my map that I've made here as far as the chances for different types of snowfall here. Super, super exciting stuff here. So we have a light blue region and then a darker blue region. We do see our low pressure system and where it's looking to track as well. They're indicated by that white line that I've put there for you guys to be able to more easily see where it's going to go. But we can see in the lighter blue, we're expecting moderate chance and could be major, so there is a little bit less chance of actually seeing snowfall than in the darker blue, but it also could be major for sure. In the darker blue there, that's where I expect the highest chance, and it definitely could be major as well. And you might be wondering, a lot of those models didn't show much snow for Maine, but I think that there is a pretty good chance that we see this one shift a bit more north and show more snowfall for coastal regions of Maine. Again, no promises for sure, but I definitely think that there's a really, really good chance of things like that happening. All right, now let's get into kind of our analysis of Winter Storm Ezekiel for the northeastern United States. I did want to show you guys some of the snowfall maps for what actually fell and kind of go over how this storm went down. So let's get right into that. All right, so we see a ton of reds, a ton of dark reds and oranges and blues. In the blue colors, we're looking at a dusting to 6 inches of snow that fell. In the more yellow and orange regions, though, that's where we saw 6 to even 18 inches of snow. Pretty widespread for that much snow. And then in the reds, that's where we saw 18 to 30 inches of snow. Those more darker red spots is where we saw actually 24 to 30 inches of snow. Near Albany, they got a lot. And also on the border of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, we saw a lot as well. This storm overperformed, but overall, where we had the bullseye on our forecast was actually very, very accurate in my opinion. I'll show you guys my forecast for that storm right now. All right, so here was our total snowfall on the storm that we had forecasted. And as you can see, we kind of underdid it. We lowballed it for sure. In those, we'll just go over the higher amounts there. I think the placement was really good as far as where we had the bullseye. I just think we should have broken out the pink color, which was the 20 to 30. If we would have had those near Albany and then some of that near near Massachusetts and New Hampshire, that would have been almost a perfect forecast and had that purple color a little bit more widespread. That's just my thoughts on it based on what I've seen as far as how much snow has fallen. But 15 to 20 inches in that purple shade, so in Albany and to the west of it, and then in the Berkshires and some of the southern Vermont regions, and on the border of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, all of those regions we were forecasting to receive around 15 to 20 inches of snow, whereas they saw about 24 inches to 30 inches in some of those regions, especially, again, on the border of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and then near Albany and to the west of some of those regions. Albany got it the worst from what I've heard so far. If you lived in Albany, be sure to DM me some of those photos of how much snow fell, or I guess if you live in any of the regions. I haven't really reminded you guys of that much, but I love seeing photos from the storms that happened after I forecasted them. So I would absolutely love it if you guys sent those to me. And I'd be sure to try to feature them in some of my future forecasts as well. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.